Good to see you, Sander.
Thank you.
Does everybody distinguish the difference between a Bitcoin and a blockchain?
That's sometimes a bit difficult. But if you say you can spend one and the other you cannot, then things become a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And some people are traders, so they're interested in what Bitcoin does in terms of value. Others are nerds like me. They're interested in what the technology underlying Bitcoin actually does.
Right.
And hopefully that clarifies a bit.
All right. So you wanted to show a clip about the horse meat scandal.
Yeah, I had to show a clip. So
Yeah.
here it is.
So here it is, horse meat scandal. There you go.
Een bedrijf in Noord-Limburg wordt verdacht van fraude met paardenpaspoorten. De onderneming zou die hebben vervalst, waardoor paarden die niet geschikt waren voor consumptie toch met dat doel konden worden verkocht. Dat meldt het Openbaar Ministerie. De man en de vestigingsplaats van het bedrijf zijn niet bekendgemaakt. De opsporingsdienst van de Nederlandse Voedsel- en Warenautoriteit heeft het bedrijf doorzocht en beslag gelegd op administratie, een woning, voertuigen en bankrekeningen. Het Limburgse bedrijf en zijn eigenaar worden verdacht van valsheid in geschriften en het vervoeren van tientallen paarden zonder geldig paspoort.
Okay. So why does this have to do anything with blockchain?
The problem is we never had any other tooling that would allow us to enforce specific information to be trusted or not be valid at all. We always had to rely on governance models to do that. And those governance models would be checked in hindsight to say, look, yeah, that was properly done or not. And if it wasn't properly done, then we'll seize the administration. That doesn't do anything. So now with this kind of blockchain technology, where you can actually distribute information in such a way that misusing it or trying to forge it becomes immediately visible to everyone else, we can now say that this kind of technology should be implemented to prevent these kind of cases because we have a moral obligation to do so.
So I understand what the blockchain is, but maybe not everybody does.
What blockchain technology allows you to do is to register information in a shared ledger, where information is stored but cannot be altered. If people try to alter the information, then the network will simply refuse it because there is a chain of information that's glued together by small timestamps. And these timestamps can be proved. So you can go back to the first transaction and prove that all the transactions that happened in sequence are part of the same, as you say, valid chain.
Right.
So if you cannot forge the information, then you can never forge, in hindsight, a passport.
If this is applicable on horse passports, then it must be applicable on much more.
The main question that we always get when we sit on the table is, so what is the use case? But for foundational technology, there is no use case. It doesn't solve any of the problems that we have because there are problems that we cannot see. When the internet came into existence, people said, why do we need the internet for? When there were cell phones, what problems do they solve? It's not about solving problems that we understand. It's about looking at new technology and then reconsider how things used to go in the past.
Right.
And then see if technology can make it better.
So can you give an example in health?
So in health, there are medical records. And the big question in health is, how do I access the medical records, given the question and mandate that I have? So normally your medical records is at your general physician, and he manages this record for you. And now the question is, how can I access it if I am either a patient or, let's say, a pharmacist or anyone else who wants to do something with that information? A big challenge is, as soon as you make that information accessible, it's out in the open. So insurance companies, doesn't matter who, as soon as you have access to the actual information, it's yours. You can copy it and do whatever you want, and there's no way to protect it. What you can do with this kind of infrastructure is create a proxy between the actual information and the request that I have. So I could ask this blockchain network, how many people that are treated by this general physician from this practice smoke and are older than 35? And then the network would register an answer that you could prove if you would have the underlying data that the answer would be 436. But what you don't get is the actual data and the medical records that you would normally need to prove that. So what you create is a barrier of trust where people cannot misuse the trust in such a way that you would never want to allow it. But today there's simply no way to allow it other than to create third parties that would govern that task as their sole purpose.
Right. So my bank account You have money, I presume.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. And is it in a bank?
Yeah, it is.
But do you trust them then?
Well, no. But why should I care about it? And as in, I'm not looking at what is today. I'm trying to look at how can we make this more interesting
So
and
how
better
can
tomorrow.
we make this more interesting, the banking world more interesting with blockchain then?
Well, this is not a question for retail banks or large banks that we have in the Netherlands. It's a question for central banks. What central banks have been doing all the time is guaranteeing people the value of money by handing you a piece of paper. Right? And go to the central bank and say, look, there's trust in this piece of paper that you give me. So what did central banks always wanted to do, and this is an idea that's over 20 years old, they wanted to give that guarantee in a digital form. But they couldn't, because they would needed some sort of third party that would act as the trustee between them and the people who would own this central bank money in order to make it work technically. With this blockchain technology, we can actually create a digital form of central bank money.
It's a bearer instrument, a digital bearer instrument.
Yes. So given the fact that that's possible, then the next question would be, what is the added value of a bank account held by a local bank in the Netherlands or Belgium, wherever, if you can also hold central bank money at the same cost?
I'm just elaborating a little bit more on the example, CO2 emission rights.
Yes, they're here to help our environment and to protect it. But the problem with these rights is that they're administered in such a way that people become very creative with it. So in other countries, the rights are so-called created by doing some kind of local compensation trick so that you can actually create a right and then sell it back to Europeans. The other problem is that the rights were administered centrally in a system that got hacked, and then a number of rights simply disappeared. And if you now have this technology to not only protect these kind of mistakes from happening, but also make the trading of these rights more transparent, and this is the key, then you're fulfilling your obligation to the European citizens that this system actually works and is transparent and therefore protected. And that's exactly the thing. As a government, you have an obligation to your citizens to prove that you're doing a proper thing. Like in the Netherlands, we have Wet Openbaarheid Bestuur, WOB, and that law says that you can write to your either local or national government and say, look, send me this information because I want to know what you did. So we have a legal obligation as a government to provide that information. But that's a costly measure. Why? Because first the information is centralized in the government systems, and then they have to take it out again, print it, black something out, and then send it back to you. So if you can use IT to make the whole process transparent, you hit two birds in one stone.
Right.